going to Israel tomorrow. Hamas has now a proposal from Egypt on their table that is accepted by Israel. It means a ceasefire and also release of hostages. Are you optimistic that Hamas will accept this? If they don't accept it, I guess Israel will go ahead with further escalation on Rafah. If Hamas accepts it, I guess you this afternoon, also among the foreign ministers, will then discuss a path to peace and maybe a two-state solution.
Well, thank you, Borg, and thank you for having me on this panel. Yes, I've definitely got an AstraZeneca in here and a Moderna in here, I think, so thank you very much for that. I'm never optimistic about this because it never pays to be optimistic on peace in this very difficult situation. But it does seem to me there is now, let's be frank, a pretty generous offer of, sustained 40-day ceasefire, the release of potentially thousands of Palestinian prisoners in return for the release of these hostages who've now been in captivity for over 200 days. So I hope Hamas do take this deal, and frankly all the pressure in the world and all the eyes of the world should be on them today, saying take that deal. It will bring about this stop in the fighting that we all want to see so badly. And let's assume for a second that does happen. That would be a good outcome. But then the most important thing is how do you build the momentum to turn that stop into the fighting into a permanent, sustained ceasefire and a political process that can bring this conflict to an end. And I think there's a number of things we need to see. We need to see the Palestinian Authority that's now been appointed. We need to see that invested in and supported by others and getting set up in Gaza. We need to see the release of all the hostages, fundamentally. This conflict won't come to an end until all the hostages are released. We need to see a proper political horizon for a two-state solution so that we can see a future in which there's a secure Palestine alongside a secure Israel. But crucially, this won't work unless the other two conditions are fulfilled, which in my book would be the fact that the people responsible for October the 7th, the Hamas leadership, would have to leave Gaza, and you've got to dismantle the terrorist infrastructure in Gaza. Because fundamentally what this comes down to is unless you can see two things happening at the same time, we're never going to make progress. And those two things are, you've got to see a political future for the Palestinian people, but you've also, crucially, got to see security for Israel. And those two things have to go together. And I think one of the challenges as we have these meetings here, which is so worthwhile, is to make sure we focus equally on both. Because the Palestinians will only feel secure if they can see the horizon to their own state, and Israel will only feel secure if they can see the concept of a Palestinian state that doesn't threaten their own security. So we're in a better place potentially than we've been for a while, but we really need to see this hostage offer accepted and the pause in the fighting so that we can then create the momentum. And that's the job of the foreign ministers, is to try and create the momentum to turn it into a sustainable, permanent ceasefire.
I also raised with Secretary Blinken just an hour ago that many speakers here have said that the lack of a two-state solution is also the origin of a lot of the challenges. So if there was a path towards a two-state solution based on the principles mentioned, it would also, according to these speakers, take a lot of momentum out of, for example, what we're seeing from Iran and their proxies.
Yeah, well, it takes, I mean, obviously, look, you're never going to bring about peace and stability in the Middle East unless you deal with the question of the future for the Palestinian people. That is right, but I don't think we should be naive and think that all the problems will be solved if that were to happen. You often hear on the BBC and other channels saying, well, there's a variety of conflicts happening here. There's the conflict between Israel and Palestine. There's the potential conflict between Sunni and Shia, between Saudi Arabia and Iran. But I would add there's also a third conflict going on, which is a conflict within Islam between those who want to see Islam as a religion of peace that can exist in all sorts of different states but in a stable way, and those who have an extremist version of Islam that leads them towards a path of violence. And it is worth, Hamas is not just
रियाज में आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम का खुसूसी इजलास जारी है। इस खुसूसी इजलास में इख्तितामी सेशन में शरह नमू में नई जहद पर गुफ्तगू की जा रही है। वज़ीर-ए-आज़म मोहम्मद शहबाज शरीफ इख्तितामी सेशन में शरीक हैं। आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम का खुसूसी इजलास रियाद सऊदी अरब में जारी है और इसका इख्तितामी सेशन है जिसमें शरह नमू में नई जहद पर गुफ्तगू हो रही है। इस इख्तितामी सेशन में वज़ीर-ए-आज़म मोहम्मद शहबाज शरीफ भी शरीक हैं। रियाद में आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम के खुसूसी इजलास का ये इख्तितामी सेशन है जिसका मौजू शरह नमू में नई जहद है। वज़ीर-ए-आज़म मोहम्मद शहबाज शरीफ इस इख्तितामी सेशन में शिरकत कर रहे हैं। वज़ीर-ए-आज़म मोहम्मद शहबाज शरीफ आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम के खुसूसी इजलास के इख्तितामी सेशन में शरीक हैं। इस इख्तितामी सेशन का मौजू है शरह नमू में नई जहद। इस मौजू पर गुफ्तगू की जा रही है। इस हवाले से आपको आगाह कर रहे हैं कि आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम का इख्तितामी सेशन रियाद सऊदी अरब में जारी है। इसी हवाले से मज़ीद तफ़सील जानेंगे नुमाइंदा PTV न्यूज़ असद यार खान से। असद यार खान, आगाह कीजिएगा, आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम का खुसूसी इजलास है और अब इख्तितामी सेशन की जानिब एक गामज़न है।
जी बिल्कुल, इस वक्त जो आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम का जो खुसूसी इजलास है उसकी एक इख्तितामी नशिस्त है और ये नशिस्त जो है शरह नमू में नई जहद इस मौजू पर हो रही है क्योंकि अगर गुज़िश्ता 30 सालों का डाटा देखा जाए तो ये जो दिहाई है इसका आखिरी हिस्सा सबसे ज़्यादा शरह नमू में कमी आई आलमी सतह पर। तो इसको किस तरीके से इसमें इजाफा लाया जा सकता है, वो क्या वजूहात हैं जिनकी वजह से ये सब मसाइल पेश हुए और अब क्या हिकमत अमली और अप्रोचेज़ इख्तियार की जाएँ जिससे शरह नमू में इजाफा हो। और इसके लिए जो बुनियादी इक़दामात हैं वो पायदार तरक्की है लेकिन एक तवाज़ुन के साथ जिसमें एक तरफ अगर तरक्की की अमल जो है वो तेज़ी से आगे बढ़ता है तो जो दीगर माशरे के तमाम जो सेगमेंट्स हैं वो भी उसी तरीके से आगे बढ़ें। वज़ीर-ए-आज़म मोहम्मद शहबाज शरीफ जो हैं वो इस इख्तितामी सेशन में, इस नशिस्त में शिरकत कर रहे हैं। इसके साथ उनके साथ डेविड कैमरॉन हैं जो बरतानवी वज़ीर ख़ारजा हैं, एना मार्क्स हैं जो ग्लोबल चेयर ऑफ डिलॉयट की सरबराह हैं। इसके साथ साथ इस सेशन को जो मॉडरेट कर रहे हैं वो बोजे ब्रेंडे हैं जो आलमी इत्तफाक है कि वो कौन से इक़दामात होने चाहिए, जिस वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग है, जो फ़नी तालीम है उससे आरास्ता किया जाए ताकि वो एक कौमी तरक्की में अपना एक मुफीद किरदार अदा कर सकें। इसके साथ साथ वज़ीर-ए-आज़म जो हैं आज के इजलास में बिलखसूस जो पाकिस्तान में सरमायाकारी के हवाले से की जाने वाली कोशिशें हैं उससे भी आगाह करेंगे और SIFC का जो किरदार है ताकि सरमायाकारों के लिए एक वन विंडो ऑपरेशंस की सहूलत फराहम की जा रही है ताकि सरमायाकारों के लिए आसानी हो और वो आसानी से पाकिस्तान में अपना कारोबार को वसअत दे सकें। जी
असद यार खान, अब हमें तफसीलात से आगाह कर रहे हैं। आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम का ये खुसूसी इख्तितामी सेशन है और इसमें शरह नमू में नई जहद के हवाले से जिस तरह से आपने जिक्र किया है कि ख़ास तौर पर इस दिहाई के आखिर में आकर कोविड के सूरत हाल का सामना रहा। प्री कोविड, पोस्ट कोविड दो मुख्तलिफ सिचुएशंस हैं और इन सिचुएशंस में पाकिस्तान का मौक़िफ़ हमेशा से यही रहा है कि अमन पुरअमन बक़ाए बाहमी के ज़रिए आगे बढ़ना है। एक दूसरे का मदद है उसके ज़रिए हम आगे बढ़ सकते हैं, तिजारत के ज़रिए आगे बढ़ सकते हैं और दुनिया में अमन के क़याम के हवाले से पाकिस्तान का जो एक नुक्ता नज़र रहा है उसकी तरवीज की गई है। वज़ीर-ए-आज़म मोहम्मद शहबाज शरीफ ने इससे कबल जितने भी सेशंस हुए हैं उनमें भी खिताब के दौरान पाकिस्तान में इन्वेस्टमेंट के हवाले से अपने अज़्म का इयादा किया है, दावत दी है, शराकत की दावत दी है। अब ये इख्तितामी सेशन किस कदर अहमियत का हामिल है?
जी, वज़ीर-ए-आज़म ने जो इस आलमी इक़्तिसादी फोरम में शिरकत के दौरान जो मुख्तलिफ आलमी रहनुमाओं से भी मुलाकातें की हैं और बिलखसूस उनका ये एक फोकस रहा है कि पाकिस्तान जो है वो एक ऐसा मुल्क है जो एक तो माहौलियाती तब्दीली की वजह से बहुत ज़्यादा मुतासिर हो रहा है। इसी तरीके से जो कम आमदन वाले मुल्क हैं उनके ऊपर एक और जो मसला है
followed all the developments in your country. Pakistan, such an important country geopolitically, where it is situated, but also with a lot of potential for growth. But it has been through a rough period. We know that it's victim of big floods and possibly climate change related to that. It's also been instability when it comes to electricity. It also has had macroeconomic challenges. But based on the past, what is your plan as the new Prime Minister now to revive growth, better governance, and also make really Pakistan into a middle-income country or an upper-middle-income country by 2047? And sir, you have to take the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Brande. Just one sentence. Lord Cameron is a friend, and he's with other mediators doing a very hard work. But I want to make it very clear that the world will not be in peace unless there is permanent peace in Gaza. I'm telling you very frankly, and we're all feeling the heat. And as if it is not already enough, look at what has Ukraine brought to the world. You know, commodity prices went, skyrocketing. We could not procure vital raw materials for our agri-economy and industrial economy. And on top of that, inflation hitting and breaking the back of developing countries. And then, coupled with that, the country. And we had to cough out hundreds of billions of rupees from our own scarce resources to rehabilitate effectives, millions of them, children, under the sky. We're very grateful to all those friendly countries which were very helpful. Saudi Arabia, Britain, and Gulf countries, and of course, the United States of America and many other countries. But the point at issue is where you have lost $30 billion in terms of your economic losses and 100 billion rupees, which is probably $300 million or so, it is just a fraction. And then when we approached international entities in Geneva and in other places, we had to borrow loans at expensive rates. I mean, we were not at fault at all. For no rhyme or reason, our country was hit, never lost hope, and accepted the challenge. And in the very same government regime, in 18 months, they raised 6 new small factories to avoid further nationalization. Goodness Bank was their banker. They said, come to England, we will give you a lot of opportunities. My father said no. I was born. Elitist culture, doles out, hands out being given to those who don't deserve it. Our revenue sector in tatters, of what we receive annually, we lose at least 4 times that amount through leakages. And unless we plug these loopholes, we'll never be able to recover from these devastating impacts out of actions of our own, nobody else's. Let me be very clear. And then there is also a problem of inflation and debt trap. I call it death trap. Now, all this put together is a big challenge. I have to acknowledge from the core of my heart the support we have been given and received from Saudi leadership. I think a friend in need is a friend indeed, and we will never be able to repay back to them what they've done to Pakistan in difficult times. My friend, under his watch, DFID has been outstandingly supporting Pakistan in education and health. But the point at issue is that we have to stand on our own feet. And I know this is possible, difficult, but not impossible. And how? That is the point at issue. We are now going for massive reforms, deep-rooted structural reforms. It'll hit me as Prime Minister. Obviously, I have to provide leadership by example, ladies and gentlemen. Without that, nothing will happen. And then, of course, we have to go for austerity, meaningful austerity, just not for publicity. And 3, we have a very young population. And this young population, which go into hundreds of millions of boys and girls, is a challenge, yet a great opportunity. So we have to provide them with modern tools and technologies, information technology, AI, and other vocational training, to provide them with opportunities to become self-earners, SMEs. And then here in Saudi Arabia, they should come here and open offices and contribute in nation-building efforts here. In Pakistan, promote our agriculture through modern techniques, and of course, providing the farmer with best seeds and fertilizer, and of course, modern tools. My dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's a humongous task. It's not an easy task. We have to go for higher exports. For that, we have to have opportunities made available to our exporters. We are a country. We don't have oil. We have gas, but it is on the lower trend, depleting. We have our biggest asset, natural resources, mines and minerals, fertile land, and of course, this youth, which is the biggest asset for Pakistan. And together, I'm not going into details over here, but before I came here, for example, in order to have deep-rooted structural changes, you have to separate black sheep from the white. And before I came here, for the first time in the history of Pakistan, after getting credible input from agencies, I made OSDs, those highest level officers who were not functioning, had a gray record, and I said, come what may, I will not accept any pressure. I will move forward with a sense of purpose, with a sense of achievement, and make Pakistan find its place in Committee of Nations through hard work and untiring efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I think you heard on the applause that was very well received. I'm moving now to Anna Marks, a global chair of Deloitte. I think what we also have heard during these 2 days, and I know you, Anna, have been in many of the sessions too, is that we need more collaboration. If we work against each other, it's not productive. And you're seeing this in business context all the time. How can we collaborate better to meet the targets we have set, being sustainability, being inclusion? So I know you have some thoughts on this.
Well, thank you.
And your mic.
I think I would know after watching the previous 2 speakers and after dealing with remote working for quite some time during the pandemic. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the World Economic Forum and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening and hosting this special meeting. It has been a fantastic couple of days, and it has been inspiring to hear the openness, the enthusiasm, the acknowledgement, the optimism, despite the complexities, some of which we've heard just now. And you talk about collaboration and how is collaboration important, particularly when we look at inclusive growth, sustainable growth, growth that means that we can grow in a way that's fair and proportionate across societies, across geographies. And we can't do that without collaboration. And if we just pause on what we mean by collaboration, because actually these meetings are a great forum for debate and discussion and to start to collaborate. But that's very, very different from cooperation. And we hear about cooperation, but really all that is about assigning each other different tasks, working alongside each other, and ensuring that what I do doesn't disrupt what you do. Collaboration is different. Collaboration is convening and creating a common goal, a common vision, and building the activities together and executing those activities together to reach that goal. And that's true collaboration. And given the complexities we're facing globally right now, much of which has been debated and discussed over the last couple of days, it's very easy to see and to feel that there's an increase in invisible and visible barriers to collaboration. And I'd encourage us all to look for where we can collaborate, because without collaborating, we can't achieve our goals of truly inclusive growth. And maybe if I just give one example to bring it to life. If we think about the sustainability aspect, you mentioned sustainability, and we talk about the importance of sustainable aviation fuel. Sustainable aviation fuel could have a significant impact on our ambitions around carbon emission reduction. And the International Air Transport Association talks about sustainable aviation fuel probably contributing around 65% or so of the solution to achieve the net zero goals set out for 2050. It's that important. But it's nascent, it's expensive, it's going to take time to produce the production facilities, the raw materials. If we allow this to continue, and if we operate in silos, we won't achieve what we need to achieve, which is to accelerate and to achieve those goals for net zero ambitions. So what we need is collaboration. We need the agricultural waste producers to think about alternative sources of raw material. We need the jet fuel producers to be aligned with that and think about repurposing and building the production capability and processes. We need the transportation sector to think about how do we transport, what are the logistics that are required around that, complying with regulation.
We had a big contraction of the global economies during COVID. We'll come back to that with Stefan. But no, many countries are back at pre-COVID levels, most countries. And we see that growth is back, not as high as it used to be, but growth is back. How do you, from the Kingdom's side, see the projection now for the coming year? The Kingdom's economy is doing pretty well and has also diversified. 50% of your GDP is now already non-oil related. So how do you look at global economic outlook?
So, thank you, Borge. I believe we view the global economy evolving, but still stuck in a low growth, I'd say, phase, and it's unevenly distributed. If you look, for example, at IMF's recent projection, they've been increased to 3.2, but if you double click on that, you'll see that advanced economies are between 1.6, 1.8% for the coming year, and the US stands out a little bit at 2.7%. If you look at emerging economies, they're a bit higher at 4.2%, driven mainly by India, but also the Middle East and Central Asia. India at 6.5, Middle East, Central Asia at around 4.5% and more. So that's not the growth. The US has seen an upward trend recently, but that's still the story. in emerging economies, there are two groups. There's the fast lane, as some experts call it, and the slow lane. The fast lane represents around 3.6 billion people. If they continue at that growth level, they would reach advanced economies level within 25 years. But you're still leaving out 1.4 billion people in the economies that they live in. So productivity needs to see a shift. We need to focus on the tools, the interventions that will help us grow productivity. And if you look at the fast lane countries, most of the growth or most of the performance came from very large investments. We're talking about 20 to 40% of GDP in terms of size. That's large. It's very hard for you to emulate that in emerging economies or most emerging economies. So policies need to be put in place. Investments need to be attracted to the right productive sectors so we can see an up. We've seen trade profiles change. We've seen countries geopolitically at distance from each other. We've seen, despite that, 20% of trade is across these geopolitical lines, and 40% of that is actually in very crucial products that are highly concentrated. So we need to acknowledge that no country, peace in the Middle East, finally, and a lasting peace, this will remove many of the headwind in front of global progress and global economic development. So we need to keep in mind productivity and